Less than a minute after the clerk slid the red divorce certificate across the counter, I opened my phone and dialed the bank calmly, like I was calling to reschedule a dentist appointment. "Hello, this is Meridian Private Banking. How may I assist you?" "I'd like to cancel 6 black cards," I said, voice steady. Immediately, on the other side of the world, in Dubai's Golden Sail Hotel, my ex-mother-in-law was lifting a champagne flute under a chandelier that looked like a frozen galaxy. Applause was crashing around her. Cameras were flashing. She had no idea that one more swipe, one final, dramatic, princess-like flourish of her wrist was about to turn her into a punchline. The divorce certificate was still warm in my bag, as if it had just been pulled from a furnace and stamped onto my skin. The gold letters "Divorce Certificate" caught the sun and glinted like a verdict, like a ticket, like a blade. "Lena," a man's voice called behind me, smooth as expensive whiskey. "Even if we're divorced, we can still be friends." I turned my head slightly, squinting into the hard noon light. Ethan Ward stood at the steps of the Civil Affairs office in a tailored suit so perfect it looked painted on, tie straight, hair combed back. That familiar, gentle mask, polished, polite, practiced, like we'd just finished negotiating a contract, not burying a marriage. "Friends?" I laughed. It came out dry, sharp, and ugly in the open air. I folded the red booklet slowly, carefully, and tucked it into my handbag like I was storing a weapon. "Ethan, do you honestly think you deserve that?" His expression twitched barely a crack before he smoothed it back into place. "Don't do this," he said softly. "We were husband and wife. I know you're angry, but feelings can't be forced. We both made mistakes." I didn't waste another breath on him. I turned and walked toward the parking lot, my heels clicking on the grey stone like a funeral drum. My nails dug into my palm. The sting kept my mind clear. 3 months. 3 months of waiting for this exact moment. "Lena Harper." His voice followed me, suddenly impatient. "When are you moving your things out?" "Next month, Ivy's moving in." I froze for half a second, just long enough for the name to land. Ivy. Ivy Quinn. 22. Freshly graduated. Legs for days. A smile that pretended innocence while her skirts climbed higher every time she leaned over my dining table to deliver documents. I didn't turn around. I simply lifted my hand, elegant as a lady, waving from a balcony, and extended my middle finger toward the sun. Then I got into my car and shut the door. The moment the cabin sealed, I unlocked my phone. My fingers flew too fast, almost mechanical. 6 black cards. I knew every number by heart. 3 were mine. 3 were the supplementary cards I'd gotten for Ethan and his parents. Because that was what a good wife did. Because for 3 years those cards had fed the Ward family's luxury like an IV drip. Yachts, watches, private jets, first-class brunches, handbags that rotated with the seasons like weather. "Cancel them," I murmured, low and steady. "All of them." The first card I killed was Ethan's. Last month's statement showed a purchase of $38,000 at Chanel. The date? Our wedding anniversary. That night he'd texted me from a crucial meeting, apologizing that he couldn't come home. While I ate cold pasta alone, he was buying someone else a bag that cost more than my first car. The second card was his mother's, Margot Ward's, favourite toy, the one she used for her ladies' society teas, her spa days, her skin treatments, her seasonal shopping rituals. A week earlier, she'd switched SIM cards just to scream at me with extra confidence. "Lena Harper," she'd hissed. "You can't even give my son a child, and you still think you have the right to control our family's money." I remembered standing in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, feeling my dignity drip onto the tile. My thumb pressed confirm. Cancelled. The 3rd. Cancelled. The 4th. Each success that lit up the screen loosened something in my chest, something I hadn't realized had been choking me for months. By the time the sixth card flashed cancelled successfully, I leaned back in the driver's seat and laughed. And then I cried. Hot tears ran down my cheeks, cut across my lips, salt and shame and relief all mixed together. The kind of crying you do when you've survived something and only now understand how close you were to disappearing inside it. In my head, Dubai played like a movie. The Golden Sail Hotel ballroom, drowning in gold, crystal chandeliers cascading overhead, lights scattering across watches and diamonds and lacquered smiles. Margot Ward, in a dress that hugged her like a declaration, celebrating her 55th birthday with a parade of women who spent money like breathing. Her social media had been a non-stop exhibition. Champagne in first class, breakfast by a private beach, rose petals floating in a presidential villa pool. Yesterday, she'd even texted me like she was tossing a bone to a dog. Lena, even if you're no longer blessed to be a ward, put tonight's party on your card. Consider it your last act of filial respect. I'd replied with a smiley face, and then I'd screenshot it. Now, I imagined the server approaching the head table with a gold-edged bill folder. Margot would tilt back in her chair, bored, generous, royal. She'd gesture for the card machine as if she owned the building. She'd slide the black card forward with a flourish. "The pin is my birthday," she'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. The server's polite smile would stiffen. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. This card has been cancelled by the primary account holder." The ballroom would go quiet the way a room goes quiet right before a storm, like someone had pressed mute on the universe. Margot would blink, Botox holding her face together even as panic crawled underneath. "That's impossible," she'd snap. "Run it again." "I'm sorry, ma'am. The system shows this card was cancelled 20 minutes ago." She'd start digging through her designer purse, pulling out backup cards like talismans. "Try this one." Cancelled. This one. Cancelled. And then the final humiliation would happen. The dawning realization in her eyes that she was not wealthy, she was sponsored. My phone began to vibrate violently in the cup holder. Ethan. Then Margot. Then unknown numbers, cousins, aunts, people who hadn't remembered my birthday in years, suddenly discovering my existence through financial terror. I watched the screen light up again and again, and I smiled. Not because I enjoyed their pain, because for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't swallowing mine. I hit silent. Started the engine. 3 years of marriage had sanded me down until I barely recognized myself. In return, I'd gotten Ethan's blatant betrayal, Margot's cruelty, and an entire family's contempt disguised as standards. Now, the game was just beginning. I wiped my face dry, opened my navigation, and typed Blake and Kerr, law firm. On the road, I sent a voice message to my best friend, Serena Park. "It's done," I said, breathing out like I'd been holding air for years. Round 1. I won. A second later, my phone lit up with a text from Margot Ward, exploding across the screen like gunfire. Lena Harper. "What did you do? Fix the cards now, or I'll ruin you." I lowered my window. Early summer wind poured in and swept the cabin clean, carrying away the faint trace of Ethan's favourite cologne, the scent I used to wear just to earn one distracted compliment. Today, I hadn't worn it on purpose. I held down the voice message button, speaking slowly, each word polished and sharp. "Mrs. Ward," I said, "you may have forgotten, but as of 10 o'clock this morning, I'm no longer a ward." I paused, smiled into the wind. "Happy birthday. And the bill? Pay it yourself. Send." Then I blocked her number. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was bright. It was clean. And it sounded exactly like freedom. I turned and looked at Ethan Ward. He was pale, so pale it was almost comic. His lips moved as if they still remembered how to charm, how to smooth. how to turn disaster into a misunderstanding. But his eyes refused to meet mine. He stared at the tablecloth, the wine glasses, the polished silverware anywhere except my face, like eye contact might peel him open down to the bone. "Ethan," I said slowly, each word placed like a stamp. "We're done." I untied the apron I'd been wearing since 9 that morning, balled it up, and tossed it onto the table. "Tomorrow," I added, "my lawyer will contact you." The relatives around us went wide-eyed. A few mouths opened. No one expected me to say it here, in Margot Ward's territory, at a family lunch where I was supposed to keep my head down and my smile soft. For 3 years I had been the woman who swallowed humiliation with soup spoons. Not today. I stood, picked up my handbag, and walked straight toward the door. No shaking, no pleading, no dramatic scene. Just a clean exit. The moment my feet crossed the villa gate, wind slapped my face, carrying the smell of grass and sun-baked stone. My lungs expanded like someone had unlatched a cage inside my ribs. For the first time in a long time, I realized I was actually breathing deep, full, real breaths. That night, Ethan didn't come home. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the second hand of the clock ticking like a metronome for war. I turned on every light. I opened my laptop. I spread the photos, the documents, the investigators' reports across the dining table like a surgeon laying out instruments. Sort, label, number, annotate, cold work, precise work. By 2 in the morning, the whole package was in my lawyer's inbox, Attorney Solomon Reed, the man my family trusted when deals turned into knife fights. At 2:07 a.m., my phone lit up with a new message. From Derek Wu, our investigator. "Miss Harper, major discovery. Ward Group's finances show signs of fraud, possible tax evasion, and a hidden slush fund. I copied part of the data. I'll brief you in person tomorrow morning." I stared at the screen until the words stopped looking like words and started looking like doors opening. A slow smile pulled at my mouth. "Ethan Ward," I whispered into the dark kitchen. "You thought cheating was the worst thing you ever did to me." I exhaled. Soft and almost amused. "Too bad. That was only the trailer." The next morning, Ethan showed up looking pathetic in a way that would have been funny if it hadn't once been my life. Dark circles under his eyes, puffy lids, shirt wrinkled, tie crooked. He smelled like cheap alcohol and cheaper perfume, sweet, synthetic, desperate. He tried to arrange his face into remorse. "Lena," he said, stepping closer, voice gentling. "My mother went too far last night. I talked to her. I promise I'll never let that happen again." He reached for me like he still had permission. I took one small step back. His arms closed around nothing. I looked at his swollen eyes, his messy collar, the faint floral scent clinging to him like a confession, and I almost laughed. Even the lies weren't dressed properly. "Okay," I said suddenly, smiling sweet, bright, obedient. The exact smile Margot loved. "Funny coincidence. My parents want to invest in a project. We need to rotate about 5 million RMB. Can you help?" His face froze. 5 million. Exactly the price of the riverside apartment he'd bought for Ivy Quinn. His gaze flicked away like a guilty dog's. "Lately the company's cash flow is tight," he mumbled. I reached up and patted his cheek, gentle as a wife in a commercial. "I'm kidding. Don't be so tense." Then, with a polite tilt of my head, I added, "Go shower. You smell like unfamiliar perfume. The exact kind Ivy wore." Ethan flinched. For a second, panic flashed raw across his eyes, then he turned and practically fled into the bathroom, as if steam could wash away evidence. The moment the door clicked shut, my smile dropped. I picked up my phone and texted Serena Park. "Find me a top-tier financial forensic analyst. I want to dig Ward Group's finances down to the roots." Send. Then I walked to the mirror and practiced the gentlest expression. I owned the docile wife, the harmless daughter-in-law, the soft-spoken woman who never made scenes. Ethan Ward. Margot Ward, I said to my reflection, my eyes turning cold. You think I'm going to cry and scream and beg for a divorce? I held the smile. No. I'll be exactly the wife you want, until I've collected everything. That afternoon, Serena and I sat across from each other in a small coffee shop hidden deep in an old alley. Rain misted the window. The espresso machine hummed like background noise from a memory I didn't miss. You're sure? Serena pushed an Americano toward me, brows pinched tight. What choice do I have? I took a sip. Bitter flooded my tongue. Familiar. Useful. I opened my camera roll. Went into recently deleted. Restored one photo. And slid the screen toward her. Ethan and Ivy kissing inside a hotel elevator. Yellow light reflecting off their faces. Pressed too close. Too intimate. The timestamp hit like a punch. My father's birthday. That day, Ethan had said he couldn't come home because of an urgent meeting. Serena sucked in a breath, jaw tightening. Bastard. Derek took it, I said, locking the screen. And this is just the surface. Serena hesitated. I have a college friend at the tax bureau. Do you want me to? Not yet. I shook my head. Ward Group's too layered. If I move too early, one mistake, and they'll flip everything onto me. Her eyes narrowed. So what's the plan? I took a small USB drive from my bag and placed it between us like a chess piece. Derek got a portion of their financial data. I can't read all of it. I paused. You told me your friend Miles Chen, the analyst? Serena's eyes lit up. Yeah. He's head of research at an investment firm. He does corporate investigations for a living. I'll call him. I watched the rain and remembered last night. Ethan, claiming overtime, staying out all night, giving me the window I needed to copy files from his computer and crack an encrypted folder. Inside were private photos with Ivy, and 3 years of real company books, nothing like what Ward Group reported publicly. Miles, Serena said into her phone, voice sharp. I need you. Now. I sat back, stirring my coffee slowly, watching the dark spiral form and reform. Ethan thought I would either endure or explode. I would do neither. I would become unreadable, because the cruelest revenge isn't one clean stab. It's draining every pillar someone stands on one by one until they fall, fully awake, with nowhere to climb back up. Where are you? Ethan Ward's voice cut through the line, sharp with irritation. My mother said we're having dinner at the villa tonight. Don't be late. I glanced at the time. 4:30 p.m. I'm out handling something, I said calmly. I might be a little late. Hurry up. You need to be here before 6. His impatience thickened. My dad has something important to announce. Click. He didn't wait for an answer. My lips curved into a thin, cold smile. Richard Ward, my father-in-law, had something important to announce. With what I knew about the Wards, 8 times out of 10, important meant one thing: money. In their eyes, this marriage had never been love. It was a cash machine with my last name stamped on it. So I arrived at 6:30 on purpose. The moment I stepped through the gate, I felt the air inside the house heavy, as if someone had poured molten lead into the walls. In the dining room, everyone was already seated. Richard Ward sat at the head of the table, his expression carved out of thunder. Finally decided to show up, Margot Ward said, her gaze slicing into me. We've all been waiting. You should learn to keep time. I'm sorry. I lowered my head, voice obedient. Traffic was terrible. While I apologized, my eyes swept the room in one quick, practice scan. There was an empty chair beside Ethan mine, and across from it, sitting upright like she belonged there, was someone I did not expect to see at the Ward family table with a napkin in her lap and a polite smile on her face. Ivy Quinn. My fingers curled into my palm, hard enough to hurt. So the mistress had been invited as a guest now. "Lena, this is Ivy," Margot said brightly, the way someone might introduce a designer handbag. "Ethan's new executive assistant, top of her class, studied abroad, an exceptional girl." I swallowed the bitterness, climbing my throat, and forced a courteous smile. "Hello." "Hello, sister-in-law." Ivy's smile deepened, dimples appearing like punctuation. Her voice was honey-sweet. "Ethan talks about you all the time." Sister-in-law. I nearly choked on the water I'd just sipped. The performance was so polished, it deserved a stage. "All right." Richard tapped his finger against the table, drawing the room back into line. His voice dropped into that business tone men use when they're about to take something. "Let's get to it." He leaned forward slightly. "The company's new project needs a 20 million deposit. Ethan says the two of you can handle 5 million. I turned my head sharply toward Ethan. 5 million? I asked, steady. "When exactly did you decide that?" Ethan didn't meet my eyes. He took a slow sip of tea, like a man sipping innocence. "Lena." His tone softened, rehearsed. "Doesn't your father have an investment maturing soon? We'd only borrow it for 6 months. Just 6. Then we pay it back." There it was. The whole family dinner was an invoice. Last time they borrowed money, they hadn't repaid a cent. This time they were reaching into my family again like it was their inheritance. "I'm afraid that might be difficult," I said, putting on the right amount of regret. "My family's group is rotating capital too. That money has already been allocated." Richard Ward's face darkened instantly. "Lena." He stressed my name, the way people do when they want you to remember your place. "We're family. Don't talk like a stranger. Ethan is your husband. If Ward Group does well, who benefits in the end? You two." "Exactly," Margot chimed in, eager as a chorus. "You married into the Wards. You're a Ward now. Why are you always standing on your birth family's side?" I lowered my gaze and ate quietly. I let them take turns pressing, hinting, guilt-tripping, occasionally answering with a small or "I understand," as if I were still the woman who could be pushed into anything with the right tone. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ivy's hand slide beneath the table and land so, accidentally, on Ethan's thigh. And Ethan did nothing, didn't flinch, didn't move. Each bite I swallowed felt like it had thorns. When dinner finally ended, Ethan stood and grabbed his car keys. "I need to stop by the office," he said. "You take a taxi home." "Something urgent?" I asked lightly, as if I didn't already know. "You wouldn't understand," he flicked his hand, irritated. "Go home." I stepped outside the villa gate and watched his BMW roll away. In the passenger seat, a curtain of long hair caught the light. I lifted my phone and snapped a photo of the license plate. The rideshare app said 8 minutes. Perfect. Just enough time to do something else. I turned and walked back upstairs to Ethan's study. It was always locked because secrets love doors. But he'd forgotten one detail. The spare key still hung inside the shoe cabinet downstairs. Because I had organized it. I unlocked the door, crossed to his desk, and opened his laptop. Password? Still my birthday. Even while cheating, he couldn't be bothered to change it. Folders filled the screen, most of them I'd already seen on my last late-night audit. But one new folder sat there like bait. The name was simple. Next time. Last time, it had been empty. Now it showed more than 10 files inside. I clicked it. A password prompt popped up. I tried the obvious ones: his mother's birthday, his father's, our wedding date, his phone number. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The error bar burned red. I hesitated, weighing whether to use a cracking tool. Anything aggressive could leave traces if he checked his system logs. Then my phone vibrated hard in my bag. Serena Park. "We found something big," she blurted, voice trembling with adrenaline. Miles just sent the results. Lena, listen carefully. Ethan has an account in the Cayman Islands. Nearly 10 million RMB has flowed into it since last year. I stood up so fast the chair legs scraped the floor. From where? On paper, it's consulting fees paid by Ward Group to a partner company, Serena said quickly. But the receiving company is a shell, no real operations, no legitimate business footprint. She paused, like she was swallowing rage. And the most shocking part? Miles traced the registration email used to set up the shell. My throat tightened. Whose email? Serena's voice went ice cold. Ivy Quinn's. For a moment, I felt something inside me go perfectly still, like the world holding its breath right before a collision. So this wasn't just betrayal. This was crime. Not moral failure. Felony level, handcuff-worthy crime. Did you save everything? I asked, low and controlled. Of course, Serena said. Miles is putting together a full forensic report timeline, money flow, ledger comparisons. But he wants to talk to you directly. Now. I checked the time. 10 p.m. Now? I know it's late, Serena whispered. But Miles thinks Ethan might be preparing to run. The line shifted. A new voice came on, calm, precise. Miss Harper. Miles Chen. I had a contact at the bank pull something discreetly. Ethan Ward scheduled a 5 million cash withdrawal at the Jinmao branch tomorrow at 10 a.m. He listed the reason as business operations. My spine went cold. 5 million in cash. No corporation needed that for daily operations, not unless someone was planning to vanish. Could he know we're investigating? I asked. Doesn't look like it, Miles said. But I kept tracing the route. After the withdrawal, that money is set to be deposited into a Hong Kong account under the name Hui Huang Investment. That's not Ward Group, I said. I found no public links, Miles replied. But here's the detail that matters. The contact email for Hui Huang Investment is another address registered to Ivy Quinn. I actually laughed one short, sharp sound. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. She wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was helping him launder money. Miss Harper, Miles's voice hardened. You need to act fast. Once money leaves the country and cycles through layers, pulling it back becomes extremely difficult. I ended the call and dialed Attorney Solomon Reed immediately. While the phone rang, my thoughts spun like blades. 5 million, what was it? Our marital assets he was quietly siphoning. Dirty corporate money he was trying to move offshore? Or both? Tangled together like rope. Lena? Solomon answered, awake and alert like he never truly slept. I summarized in tight, efficient sentences. He went silent for a few seconds, and when he spoke again, his tone had the weight of a man stepping onto a battlefield. If any of that is marital property, you can request an emergency asset preservation order. If it's corporate money, we need to prove its origin. But either way, tomorrow, he doesn't get to walk out with 5 million. How? First, Solomon said, tonight you freeze every account and card in your name that has any connection to shared funds. Make sure he can't use your access to move money. I understand. Second, I'm filing an emergency motion for an injunction asset preservation before dawn. If the judge signs it, the bank will receive the freeze order tomorrow morning. He paused, then added quietly, Lena, once you do this, there's no going back. The Wards will treat you as an enemy. I looked at the wedding photo on the wall, Ethan's arm around my waist, his perfect smile. My face tilted toward his shoulder, eyes bright with trust, as if marriage were a shelter and not a trap. I felt nothing but a clean, bitter clarity. Solomon, I said evenly, we became enemies a long time ago. He just refused to admit it. After I hung up, I stepped onto the balcony with a glass of iced lemon water. The night wind was cool, but my mind was razor awake. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Serena. So? Are we doing the Golden Air plan? I smiled. Thumbs tapping. Tomorrow at 10. Ethan will discover his accounts are frozen. Before that, I'll give him another surprise. And in my bedside drawer, the small box was already waiting. Ward Group has dodged more than 50 million in taxes, Solomon Reed said, tapping the paper with one finger like he was knocking on a coffin lid. The main method is inflating costs and fabricating transactions between shell subsidiaries. Worse, far worse, they siphoned off 20 million in government environmental subsidies. He pushed his glasses up, eyes turning sharper. This is prison-level material. I closed the folder and let out a slow breath. The kind that empties a room inside your chest. Lena, Solomon asked quietly, when do you plan to move? When Ethan moves first. I smiled, calm enough to be frightening. There's no joy in punching someone who's still swimming. The best hit is when they're already falling. When I got home, the villa was black as ink. I flicked on the lights. The chandelier blinked alive, and my body stepped back half a pace on instinct. Ethan Ward was on the sofa, tie loosened, shirt wrinkled, a whiskey bottle in front of him, already half gone. His face was the colour of storm clouds. Where were you? He rasped. At the hospital. I hung my bag, walked in, and sat across from him, as if this were a normal marriage. He curled his mouth into a bitter half-smile. Fake pregnancy, he said. Pretty convincing. The test was defective. My expression didn't change. I was surprised too. Then I tilted my head and looked him straight in the eyes. The way you look at a man you've finally stopped loving. And you? I asked softly. How did things go at the bank? For 1 second, he managed to keep his mask intact. The next, it shattered. He sprang up. The whiskey glass slipped from his hand and exploded on the floor, ice and shards skittering across the marble like insects. Lena Harper, did you have my accounts frozen? I'd expected violence. I'd expected a lunge. I slid back immediately, keeping a safe distance. Frozen? I lifted a shoulder. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. His face flushed a furious red. The court order, asset preservation. Who else would do that but you? Oh, that. I let my eyes widen slightly, as if remembering a boring detail. Solomon said it's standard procedure in contested divorces, and we're getting divorced anyway. Divorced? He stared like he'd been struck by lightning. Who said we're getting divorced? I did. My voice was flat, almost gentle. Ethan Ward, we're done. He was silent for a beat. Then he suddenly laughed, loud, ugly, disbelieving. Lena, are you out of your mind? He leaned forward, savouring his cruelty. Divorce? With what? Don't forget the prenup. You walk away with nothing. I smiled and reached into my bag. 2 items hit the coffee table with a soft, deliberate finality. A stamped hospital report, and a small silver USB drive. Take this to your mother, I said, sliding the hospital report toward him. Tell her to read it carefully. I tapped the paper once, then added, sweet as tea, sharp as glass, and tell her everything she said in that exam room today was recorded. The fury on Ethan's face flickered confusion, then calculation, then a naked flash of panic he couldn't swallow fast enough. You... His throat worked. What do you want? Simple. I held his stare, every syllable clean. First, I'm taking back what's mine. Second, you and the entire Ward family will pay for what you've done. He looked at me like I was a stranger wearing my face. You're insane. No. I stood, turning toward the bedroom. For the first time in 3 years, I'm awake. At the door, I paused, as if remembering something trivial. Oh, one more thing. I glanced back, polite as a hostess. Tomorrow is the deadline for the Environmental Bureau's bid submission. Good luck, Mr. CEO. I shut the bedroom door. With my back against the wood, I listened. A crash. Another. His footsteps pounding. A curse torn loose from his throat. Furniture slammed. Glass shattered again. Then the front door, one brutal boom. Silence swallowed the house. I exhaled slowly. Phase 1 complete. I opened my laptop, plugged in the USB drive containing Ward Group's bid documents, and watched the folders populate like a confession blooming on screen. Everything Miles Chen had decrypted sat there neatly packaged. Competitors' internal bid ranges, preferences of each evaluation committee member, even the projected commission figures. Documents that should not exist on any system were now sitting in my hands like loaded ammunition. Tomorrow, they would be delivered anonymously to the tender committee's inbox and the discipline inspection unit. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. Everything is in place. 9 a.m. Tomorrow, the Tax Bureau will conduct a surprise inspection at Ward Group. I replied with a single line. Understood. Another message followed immediately. The Cayman account materials Miles traced have been organized. The Tax Bureau will coordinate the investigation. Good. I typed. Then my father's next message arrived so fast it felt like it had been waiting behind the first. Remember this. No matter what happens, the Harper family is your rear guard. I set the phone down and walked to the window. The night sky was thick, only a few faint stars bleeding through the darkness. Tomorrow wouldn't be a skirmish. It would be a bloodbath. Ethan Ward, I whispered into the glass. Are you ready? 6 a.m. I stood in front of the mirror and adjusted my collar. A crisp white silk blouse. A black pencil skirt that held my waist like a promise. Minimal pearl studs. Hair swept into a clean, high twist. Not dressing for divorce. Dressing for war. My phone buzzed again. Serena Park. Tax inspectors arrive at 8:30. I arranged it so a few reporters will, coincidentally, be passing by the Ward building. I sent back a simple okay, then opened my laptop one last time. In a folder titled End, everything was stacked with ruthless neatness. Ethan and Ivy's hotel photos, the deed copy for the Riverside Garden apartment, proof of tax evasion and stolen subsidies, the recording of Margot Ward calling me a barren hen, each file a bullet. Today, every bullet would be fired straight into the heart of the Ward name. At 7, the doorbell rang. I opened it. Solomon Reed stood there with his assistant, both in dark suits, both carrying slim briefcases, like weapons you could file in court. Ready? Solomon asked. I tightened my grip on my handbag strap, the edge of my smile barely visible. Yes. I stepped aside. Let's go! Inside, I picked up the document bag on the coffee table. The leather felt cold, like touching a gun that had already been cocked. Everything's here, I said. And your head? Solomon's eyes were sharp enough to cut. Last time I ask, you're really filing today? Absolutely. My calm sounded unfamiliar even to me. Today was the $300 million environmental bid. Today was the tax raid. Today, the media would be, accidentally, on site. I wanted Ethan Ward served with divorce papers at the exact lowest point of his life, when his empire started to crack under his feet. Solomon's mouth lifted in quiet approval. That's Harper blood. 28th floor. CEO. Office. Ward Group. The morning meeting was underway. Senior executives sat around a long walnut table. The presentation screen showed bidding progress slides. When I pushed the door open, every voice died mid-sentence. The first eyes I met were Ethan's. His face tightened. Darkness rolling in like thunder. What are you doing here? His gaze flicked to Solomon behind me. Then to the black leather case in Solomon's hand. The executives understood instantly. Chairs scraped back. "Mr. Ward, we'll step out," someone said quickly. The last person closed the door with careful, cowardly quiet. Only 3 of us remained. I pulled out a chair and sat down without permission, placing the document bag on the table. "Ethan Ward," I said. No preamble, no softness left to fake. "We're getting divorced." His mouth twisted into a familiar sneer as he leaned back in his swivel chair, arrogance trying to return like a reflex. "Lena, what's wrong with your brain?" He drummed the tabletop. "The prenup. You leave with nothing. What do you think you can bargain with?" "Is that so?" I smiled. Solomon opened his case and began laying documents out calmly, neatly, like arranging the components of a bomb. "Then what about these?" I dialed Solomon Reed. "Solomon," I said, keeping my voice steady, "can you get me into Renhay Hospital? I want to visit Mr. Ward." A pause. His tone dropped into something heavier, more protective. "Now, Lena, it's not safe. Margot and Ethan will be there, and if they see you, that's exactly why I have to go." I spoke slowly, each word placed like a chess piece. "There are things I want said in front of everyone. No more private threats. No more whispered lies." Before I left the cafe, I checked my phone one last time. Everything had been synced to the cloud. Copies of the financial files, photos, videos, recordings, every ugly detail, including Margot's screaming in the exam room that morning. The Ward family's real face, the rot behind Ward Group's polished glass, had become my quiet arsenal. 3 years. The Harper lamb had finally shed its skin. Ethan Ward. Margot Ward. "What you did to me, I'll return it tenfold." The second strike began. The real performance had always been waiting backstage. Renhay Hospital's VIP corridor was unnaturally silent, as if even footsteps weren't allowed to breathe. Outside the special care room, I adjusted my collar, inhaled once, and pushed the glass door open. The room was packed. Ethan, Margot, a few Ward relatives, nurses, doctors. Every head turned at the same time. Their stares landed on me like blades. Ethan reached me first. He clamped down on my wrist. Voice low but tight as wire. "What are you doing here? Haven't you caused enough trouble?" I shook him off and stepped back exactly 1 pace, close enough to be heard. Far enough to be untouchable. "I heard Mr. Ward was hospitalized," I said evenly. "I came to visit." "A wolf visiting a wounded lamb," Margot snapped, eyes swollen from crying, venom intact. "Get out. You're not welcome here." I ignored her, letting my gaze slide across the room until it settled on the man in the bed. Victor Ward looked smaller than I remembered. His skin was grey, oxygen tube at his nose, an IV needle in the thin back of his hand. A heart monitor blinked and chirped beside him like a metronome counting down a life. But when he saw me, something cleared in his clouded eyes. "Lena." His voice was a rasp, more breath than sound. "You came." One simple address, and my chest caught for a fraction of a second. 3 years of marriage, and it was the first time he called me anything like family instead of Miss Harper. "Mr. Ward," I said softly, stepping 2 paces closer and stopping at a measured distance. "How are you feeling?" "Not dead yet." A bitter curve touched his mouth. Then he coughed hard, violent. The monitor spiked. An alarm shrilled. Doctors surged forward. "Step back. Everyone. Move." We were pushed toward the door in a tight, tense cluster. In that moment of controlled chaos, I still felt Victor's eyes on me, trying to say something his throat wouldn't allow. Margot seized the opportunity like a starving animal. "This is because of you." She shoved my shoulder, her voice slicing through the sterile air. "If you hadn't reported the company, if you hadn't frozen his accounts, he wouldn't be in here. You're bad luck. You black crow." I didn't fight her. Arguing in a room with a man on oxygen would only make me smaller. Besides, I'd already gotten what I came for. Confirmation of Victor's condition, a quick glance at the chart at the foot of the bed, and the name of his attending physician, someone my father knew. In the corridor, Ethan caught up again, grabbing my arm as if ownership was still a habit. "What do you want?" he hissed. "What are you trying to do?" I pulled free and took out a folded paper, held it up between us. "This is for you." A red court seal stared up from the top. "A summons." "Tomorrow," I said, calm as ice. 9 a.m. First divorce hearing. Ethan's face twisted. "You're insane. My father's in a hospital bed." And I let a cold smile touch my lips. Does his illness magically extend our marriage? His jaw flexed. "Don't think you've won. Those proofs I can countersue you. Corporate secrets. Leaked internal files. Go ahead," I said, then turned to leave. Halfway down the hall, I paused like I'd remembered something light and casual. "Oh, please send my regards to Ivy Quinn." He froze. "What did you just say?" "Nothing." I smiled and kept walking. Good luck with the bidding. Outside, in Serena's car, the tension finally loosened from my shoulders. "How'd it go?" Serena's eyes were bright, fierce, better than I expected. I leaned back. "Victor's sick, but not dying today. The doctor is an old friend of my father's. As long as there are no complications, he'll recover." Serena stared. "You planned for that too?" "I planned for anything." My voice went flat. They're surrounded on all sides. People do desperate things when they're cornered. I'm not volunteering to become their scapegoat. My phone exploded with notifications, reporters, finance bloggers, unknown numbers. The leak about the tax bureau raid had turned my name into bait. Serena shoved her phone into my hand. A screenshot of a private Rich Wives chat. Margot's message sat in the middle like a lit match. "That woman Lena Harper can't even have children. And she's framing my son for cheating. A snake in sheep's clothing. She'll pay." I read it and laughed quietly. "Don't worry," I said. "She's right about one thing." Serena blinked. "Which part?" "The ending." I stared up at the car ceiling, my voice dropping into a darker register. "Everyone pays." The messages kept coming, oiled with panic. Margot escalated, claiming I'd been unfaithful first, that Ethan had only sought another woman because he'd endured enough. People agreed, as if believing her would keep their own marriages safe. "Why aren't you angry?" Serena asked, genuinely baffled. "What's there to be angry about?" I opened my hidden folder and showed her the proof. Hotel bookings, transfer logs, Ivy's ultrasound report, the money trail bleeding from corporate accounts into private pockets. I already prepared 3 versions of the story. Simple, digestible, adaptable. A written exposé, short clips, and an infographic set. Serena inhaled sharply. "You're really going to drop it online?" "After the hearing." I checked the time. Let the bullet fly a little longer. Nothing hits harder than a blast timed perfectly. Back at my apartment, I sank into a hot bath until steam blurred the mirror. My body finally admitted how tense it had been, muscles hard as stone. Then my phone rang. Zach Morgan. "Miss Harper," he said, excitement barely contained. "I found something new on Ethan's Cayman structure. Yesterday, 2 million. Dollars moved out to an investment vehicle registered in the Virgin Islands, then it bounced back this morning." "Why the bounce?" I asked, sitting upright so fast water spilled over the tub edge. "Panic," Zach's voice sharpened. "The receiving entity, Solo Investment, is registered under Ivy Quinn." I laughed once, short and cold. Greed never knew when to stop. "More," Zach continued. This afternoon, Ivy met Ward Group's CFO, Logan Price. They sat together for nearly an hour in a cafe. I pulled the camera footage. I narrowed my eyes. Logan is Ethan's loyal dog. Was, Zach said meaningfully. Their body language? Too intimate for colleagues. A spark lit behind my ribs. You're saying Ivy and Logan? Yes, Zach said. And it's not new. I ended the call and immediately phoned Solomon, feeding him every detail. He went silent for several seconds, then his voice came out unusually stern. Lena, things are getting complicated. After tomorrow's hearing, consider a settlement. Not because you're losing, because you're winning. Families like the Wards, when pushed to the edge, do reckless things. I stood by my window, city lights threading below like luminous veins. His warning wasn't fear-mongering. It was experience. I'll think, I said, and hung up, my fingers brushing the red marks still faint on my wrist. Margot's nails, a silent reminder. The next morning, I chose a pale beige suit and a white silk blouse. Hair low and neat. One pair of tiny pearls. The woman in the mirror wasn't the clumsy bride who tried to earn love in the Ward kitchen. She was someone else now. Outside the courthouse, camera flashes cracked like lightning. Questions rained down, sharp and hungry, but I walked through them without a word. In wars where every sentence can be cut and twisted, silence is sometimes the safest blade. Inside, Ethan sat across from me, expensive suit rumpled, tie crooked, dark circles like bruises beneath his eyes. His gaze was a tangle of hatred and fear was winning. The hearing moved faster than even Solomon expected. With the evidence laid out, photos, videos, finance tables, recordings, the judge stated bluntly that the prenup's asset clause was void due to serious marital fault and issued orders to freeze accounts and property pending division. When we stepped outside, Ethan finally snapped. He blocked my path, voice shaking. You think this is over? I swear, Lena. I unlocked my phone, peeled his hand off my wrist, and held the screen inches from his face. On it, Ivy Quinn sat in the corner of a cafe with Logan Price, their hands touching, their faces too close, familiarity written in every angle. Ethan's colour drained. Of course it's not over, I said softly. It's just moved to the part where you start bleeding from inside. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. Miss Harper, a woman's voice, trembling under forced calm. It's Ivy. Can we talk? I smiled without warmth. About what? I have something, she whispered. Something about Ethan, and about your father. My pulse stalled for half a beat. 3 p.m., I said flatly. Peninsula Hotel lobby. After the call, I contacted Zach to run Ivy's movements and call history. He promised results within the hour. Then another message arrived. My father wanted to see me tonight. Urgent. In person. Hours later, in my father's old study at the Harper estate, he stood with his back to the door, staring out at the garden where the osmanthus tree had grown taller than the eaves. On his desk lay photographs exactly the ones Ivy had shown me. His voice was rough. Where did you get these? Ivy, I said. Ethan's mistress. I didn't soften it. There was no gentle way into a wound this deep. Dad, I asked, holding his gaze. Mum's death. Was it connected to the Wards? He turned around. His eyes were red, and in that moment, he looked older than I'd ever seen him. Lena, he whispered, as if my name weighed 100 pounds. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to live your life inside hatred. I went down on my knees in front of him and took his hands, thin, rigid, the knuckles worn by time and silence. I deserve the truth, I said. I've already walked into the storm. Now tell me what started it. He exhaled a long, shaking breath that sounded like a confession finally coming undone, and then he began to speak. I won't let Mum die a second time in silence. The words left my mouth in a voice that didn't sound like mine, too calm, too clean, as if something inside me had finally snapped into place. My father flinched. For a moment, the man who had carried 20 years of grief like a hidden fracture looked as if he might break all over again. "Lena," he said hoarsely, "revenge doesn't bring the dead back. I'm afraid hatred will swallow you whole. I don't want to live to hate." I shook my head. My fingers tightened around his. "I want to live so that she can see wherever she is that the truth will finally be called by its real name. And I won't do anything reckless." I leaned forward, each sentence deliberate. "I'm going to use the very things the Wards always believed they controlled. The law, finance, the media, one by one." He stared at me for a long time. Then he covered his face, and his breath came out in a sound that wasn't quite a sigh and wasn't quite a sob, drowned beneath the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. "I only have one request," he finally whispered. "Whatever you plan to do, protect yourself first. And don't become like them. I promise." I squeezed his hand, and for the first time in my adult life, I saw the line in front of me with brutal clarity. On one side, silence and swallowed tears. On the other, a war that could shake two families down to their foundations. I stood, clutching the yellowed file in my arms as if it were a piece of my mother's bones. The Wards had owed us 20 years. Now it was time to charge interest. My father was quiet for so long that the sunset nearly faded from the window before he spoke again. "I know you want blood," he said softly. "But Victor Ward is dying, Lena. Late-stage pancreatic cancer. Let him go in peace. Don't corner a man who's already halfway into the grave." I lifted my head sharply. "You knew." He nodded, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "Dr. Liu told me. Even with aggressive treatment, 3 months, at most." I moved to the window. The yard below was drenched in amber light, the osmanthus tree glowing as if someone had brushed gold dust over its leaves. A faint sweetness slipped through the crack in the frame. Mum used to say osmanthus could travel. Its scent could cross seasons and years. "I won't do anything illegal," I said, almost to the glass. "But Ethan and Margot," my voice tightened, then steadied again. "They will pay, not only for me, for her, for you." My father didn't argue. He only closed his eyes, his hand trembling on the armrest. "Don't destroy yourself," he murmured. "Your mother wouldn't want to see you turn into someone who lives only on hatred." The next morning, a call came from Raymond Shaw, Victor Ward's attorney. His voice sounded heavier than usual. "Miss Harper," he said. "Mr. Ward wants to see you. He insists it's important. Can you go?" "How is he?" I asked. "Not good," Shaw exhaled. "The cancer has metastasized, but he won't let it go. He keeps demanding one meeting with you. I don't understand what he's trying to do." Neither did I. Renhay Hospital's private suite was unnervingly quiet, filled only with the steady beep of the monitor and the sharp bite of disinfectant. Victor lay in the bed like a man already half-erased, skin sallow, limbs thin, eyes sunken. The aura of the old tyrant had vanished. All that remained was an old man rationing breath. "Lena." When he saw me, he lifted his hand, as if it weighed a ton. "You came." I stayed at the foot of the bed. Distance measured like a boundary line. "What do you want to say, Mr. Ward?" I asked calmly. He gave a crooked, pained smile. "Still calling me Mr. Ward?" His lips trembled. "You know everything now, don't you?" I didn't answer. "I owe your father an apology," he said, in broken phrases. "And your mother, more than an apology." He swallowed, eyes glassy. "Every night, for years, I dreamed the same dream. I wake up, and my hands are covered in blood. So what?" I met his gaze without flinching. My voice went colder. "Does regret bring her back?" Victor coughed violent, wrenching. The monitor spiked. A warning light flashed red. A nurse hurried in. Victor waved her away with a shaking hand. Out! I'm fine. He wasn't. His breathing sounded like sandpaper. Lena, he rasped. I know words are useless now. But Ethan and his mother, they shouldn't carry all my sins. I tilted my head. What are you saying? Your father promised me, Victor said, forcing the words out, that if I confessed publicly and gave him all the evidence, he would leave Ward Group one path to survive. With trembling hands, he pulled a thick envelope from beneath his pillow and held it out. This is my written confession, he said, and everything tied to what happened back then. I took it. It was heavier than paper should be, as if guilt had weight. The Swiss money, Victor continued, breath shallow. I already wired it back home, enough to repay part of what I stole from your family. And the anesthesiologist Teresa Zhao, she died last year. Cancer. His eyes flickered with something that looked like fear. Even now. Karma. Or coincidence. I don't know. But her shadow followed me for 20 years. My fingers tightened around the envelope's edge. The man in front of me had helped push my mother into the ground, crushed my father's life, and now he lay here offering money, evidence, tears, nightmares. But the stone in my chest didn't lift. It only changed shape, less sharp, more crushing. Mr. Ward, I said finally, voice steady, what happened between you and my father is your debt. But Ethan betrayed me. Margot humiliated me. I held his gaze. That's a different debt. You can't erase it with illness. Victor closed his eyes. 2 tears slipped from the corners into the hollows of his face. I understand. His voice cracked. Ethan will be disinherited. The new will is done. Most shares will be donated. And Margot, he swallowed hard. However you want to handle her, I won't interfere. Consider it part of my penance. When I stepped out of the room, Ethan was waiting in the corridor like a storm that had lost its direction. He looked 10 years older in a weak stubble on his jaw. Suit wrinkled, tie crooked, the shine gone from his shoes. Lena. He blocked my path, eyes bloodshot. What did you say to my father? He rewrote the will, he's donating most of the shares. I laughed. It came out colder than I expected. Isn't that reasonable? You're probably going to prison soon. What would you do with shares from a sinking ship? His hand lifted an instinct. A threat. A memory of power. For one heartbeat. I saw the groom from our wedding day layered over the man in front of me now, shaking with rage and fear. I didn't move. I only looked at him. His fingers curled into a fist and dropped. What do you want? He rasped. What will make you stop? A public apology, I said simply. You admit the affair. You admit you moved marital assets. You admit the tax and subsidy fraud at Ward Group. His face twitched. That will destroy my career. Compared to prison? I asked. Then, as if remembering something trivial, I added, oh, and send my regards to Logan Price and Ivy Quinn. The blood drained from his face. How? How do you know? I leaned in just enough for him to hear, my voice soft as a blade sliding free. I know more than you think, I said, including what an anesthesia accident at Renhe Hospital in 1999 really means. Ethan went pale in a single blink, stumbling back 2 steps like the floor had shifted beneath him. No. His throat worked. My father. He doesn't have much time left to lie, I said, straightening. You have 3 days. Apologize publicly, or prepare yourself for the cell door. I held his stare. Choose. Outside the hospital, the sunlight was harsh enough to sting my eyes. I found a quiet corner, opened Victor's envelope, and my breath caught. A thick stack of documents, and one old photograph. My mother young, radiant, standing beneath an osmanthus tree in a simple white dress, smiling like early autumn sunlight. I flipped it over. In faded handwriting, "To my beloved daughter, Lena, I hope you are happy forever." My tears finally broke free, blurring the ink. That night, Thursday, 8 p.m., Ethan's apology video went live. I sat on my sofa, a hot mug in my hands, and clicked the link Solomon's assistant sent. On screen, Ethan wore a perfect suit, but the dark circles under his eyes were ink-deep, and the corner of his mouth trembled. He looked into the camera and read every line from the script I'd written. "My name is Ethan Ward. I sincerely apologize to my ex-wife, Lena Harper. During our marriage, I committed infidelity with multiple women and transferred joint marital assets without consent." A short 3 minutes. A public humiliation big enough to crack a man like him. 10 minutes later, the shares were already past 100,000. The keyword Ethan Ward apology surged to number 1. My phone lit up and went dark and lit up again, like a storm of tiny alarms. Serena called first, almost screaming. "Lena, he actually posted it!" The comments are exploding. People are digging up the whole Ward family tree. I took one sip of tea. Bitter at first, then, strangely, sweet. Exhaustion sat on my shoulders, but underneath it, something warm spread through my chest. Because the apology was only the prologue. The real collapse, the commercial death, the partners walking away, the stock bleeding red that was the blade. And I wasn't done writing the ending yet.